I quite like the fact that David Cameron's been drafted in to be Foreign Secretary. Not because I like him, or that I think he's going to do a good job. I truly hate him, and his rosy cheeks like somebody's been doing a make-up lesson on a potato.
Let me take you away from process to more specifics. About 2 or 3 minutes ago, in answer a reply to the chair.
Now, it's the fact to make him more accountable, as he can't go to the Commons to explain what he's been up to. He has to attend committee meetings, where he gets a much more thorough grilling.
You said, and I quote, "One of the things we'd like the Israelis to do is switch the water back on." Now, that says that they turned it off. It says that you recognise they have the power to turn it on. Therefore, isn't turning water off and having the ability to turn it back on but choosing not to, isn't that a breach of international humanitarian law?
It's just something they ought to do.
And it's good to see a more back and forth between those asking the questions, like SNP MP Brendan O'Hara here, and Cameron having to respond. Here we see Cameron getting a little flustered as he's put on the spot.
Of course they should do it. Every human being would say you don't cut people's water supply off. But I'm asking you, in your position as Foreign Secretary, around the point of international humanitarian law, if Israel have the power to turn the water back on that they turned off, surely that is a flagrant breach of international humanitarian law.
Well, I'm not a lawyer. My view is they ought to switch it on because the north of Gaza, the conflict is now effectively over there, and so getting more water and power into northern Gaza would be a very good thing to do. You don't have to be a lawyer to make a judgment about that, you just have to be a human being.
Forgive me, Sir Philip, under international obligations, do occupying powers have an obligation to provide access to water, yes or no?
Yeah, so Chair, I think that is right. So yes, but I would also add that in answering your questions earlier about occupying.
I'm not asking you to apply it to Israel. The facts are, though, that they are required to. And just Lord Cameron, just to clarify, so you have received no advice at any point from any government lawyer that states that Israel is in breach of international humanitarian law?
That's not what I said.
No, that's why I'm asking you to clarify.
Yes, well, I'm going to give exactly the same answer all over again, which is what my role is, right?
I'm not interested in the role, I'm interested in the legal advice you've received.
Yes, well, the legal advice I've received is consistent with the fact that we have not changed our export
It's not about arms
procedures.
Exports, it's about international humanitarian law being upheld when it comes to aid, when it comes to the way in which airstrikes have been prosecuted, everything else. We're one question on arms exports, we've moved from them. In any realm, in any respect. So you've never had a piece of paper put in front of you by a Foreign Office lawyer that says that Israel is in breach of its international humanitarian commitments under international humanitarian law?
Look, the reason for not answering this question, I can't recall every single bit of paper that's been put in front of me. I look at everything. I mean, of course, there are lots of things that have happened where you think, well, surely that was something that shouldn't have happened, and so I don't want to answer that question because.
Forgive me, in 2013, you were quite happy to say from the dispatch box that war crimes had been committed by the Assad regime when it came to chemical weapons use, and 2 years later, you were happy to say that Hamas had committed a war crime when they shot rockets into Israel.
Yeah, well, I do think there's a difference between using chemical weapons to kill people and Israel fighting a conflict where they're trying to deal with a terrorist force that inflicted an appalling attack on their country.
It's a difference in setting or specifics or scale, but not in principle, which was your willingness and ability to determine whether or not international law had been broken.
I'm not sure we're going to get a lot further with this. If you're asking me, am I worried that Israel has taken action that might be in breach of international law because this particular premises has been bombed or whatever? Yes, of course I'm worried about that, and that's why I consult the Foreign Office lawyers when giving this advice on arms exports. So that's why I don't. If you put it that way, I'm happy to say yes, of course. Every day I look at what's happened and ask questions about, is this in line with international humanitarian law? Could the Israelis have done better to avoid civilian casualties? Of course I do that.
We have no doubt that you'd ask those questions. It's about the response you've received.
Yeah, I understand the question that you want to answer, but the question that I want to ask is the point, have you received legal advice which says that Israel is in breach of international humanitarian.
The short answer to that is no. But I want to qualify it instantly, because it's not fair on the lawyers, because of course the lawyers give you lots of advice, saying, look, we're worried about this event, that event, this event, that event. We're going to go away, we're going to consult with the Israeli authorities, we're going to ask a bunch of questions, and then we're going to give you considered legal advice, given everything, on the basis of, capability, commitment, and everything else. Have they broken international law? So that's why it's not really a yes or no answer. But I'm trying to be helpful by sort of explaining how the job works.
Okay,
does that help at all?
No.
Click here to see some dodgy Dave.